I know I'm shooting this video at a different angle. It's just because, to be honest, this room is really messy. I'm trying to get some bookshelves put together and restructure everything, and it's difficult because it's Christmas time and nobody has time to help me put all that stuff together and restructure everything. So everything's a mess right now. Anyways, I want to record a couple videos before I go to bed and wake up Christmas morning. I'm very tired, if you can't tell. Anyways, let's talk about A Complete Unknown. This is the new Bob Dylan biopic. Knew I wasn't gonna have time to go watch this next week, and to be honest, family stuff be stressful and everything's kind of crazy. So I just needed to step out and go see a movie before I have to wake up Christmas morning, and so just so happened they had Tuesday night previews for this. So they did not have for Nosferatu or any of the other movies coming out this weekend except for that like boxing movie, but I don't know, I could wait to see that. If they had Nosferatu, I might have gone and seen that too, but I did go check out I probably would have seen this one first because I love Bob Dylan. I actually recently read a book about Bob Dylan. It's really fantastic. I also reviewed Walk the Line, which is the biopic that James Mangold directed about Johnny Cash before he went on and did this one years ago. He did that one. I also reviewed one of Scorsese's documentary / concert movies about Bob Dylan. So if you're a Bob Dylan fan, there's content on this channel for you to check out. I wasn't really sure what I'm gonna feel about this movie because I've seen a lot of biopics, a lot of them for artists I love, and I can really only tell you a few of them I really like. Rocket Man and a few others, and they're like Walk the Line and stuff like that. I know it's James Mangold directing it, but that doesn't really mean much. He's kind of a director that makes some pretty good movies. Like I'm one of the few people who will defend the Indiana Jones movie he did, but I didn't really like Ford v Ferrari, so I wasn't really sure what I was going to think about this. I did really like what I was seeing of Timothée Chalamet, but we'll see. And I gotta say, I really enjoyed this movie. I really liked it. I think it's not perfect. Definitely has a few flaws that we'll get into. But what I liked most about this movie is this is a very interesting choice of a biopic to do the way he did. Because normal biopics are structured in a way where you get a little bit of their childhood. You get a little bit of their up and coming, and then you see how they become famous, their downfall of their fame, and what all that means. That's usually the template of every biopic ever made. Bohemian Rhapsody, if you watch that movie, everything that happens in that movie is basically the same thing in every other biopic, and then they put a lot of fake baloney in there. This movie doesn't do that. Don't get me wrong, it's still a movie, it's going to embellish things, but it chooses a very interesting way to portray Bob Dylan that is very accurate to his real self. But it made this movie feel like not a musical biopic, but a slice of life movie where you're watching the character Bob Dylan. The character Bob Dylan who is shrouded in mystery. I mean, this guy mumbles quite a bit in the movie. It's hard to even make out what he's saying sometimes in the movie, and I think that's very much intentional. He says things that they're like, okay, you kind of get what he's thinking, but then he'll say something that contradicts that, or maybe not contradicts that, but throws what he said before into a different light, makes you a little bit confused. There's a lot of different things, and then you get to see how Bob Dylan reacts to like fame and stuff, and everything is just like very different way to structure a biopic. Because you're not really understanding the Bob Dylan character, Bob Dylan as a person. So that is my biggest issue with this movie. I'm praising it right now, but I think this is also a pro and a con. Because making that an aspect of the movie does make the movie better and more enjoyable to people who already know Bob Dylan. because me as someone who loves Bob Dylan, I love quite a few of his albums. I've read books about him. I watched documentaries about him, all that stuff. I really enjoyed that because it was able to give me a new and different perspective on someone I already loved, right? But I think if you don't know Bob Dylan's story, this movie is not going to work for you because you're not going to come out with a better understanding of him. You might come out knowing a couple of his songs really well, but for the most part, I think it is going to leave you a little bit cold and not fully understanding Bob Dylan. And part of that is on purpose, of course, because the real Bob Dylan is kind of like this in real life, from what people will tell you about him. But I think it is still something that is going to, like the real Bob Dylan, work for you, or it's not. And so this is a good movie. Timothée Chalamet is great as Bob Dylan. I wouldn't say he's as good as people have been saying. Some people say he's unrecognizable. I feel like I definitely could see a performance. You know, it's one of those things. He was very good, and he didn't feel like Sebastian Stan in the Trump biopic, where at a certain point I kind of forgot I was watching a performance and I thought I was watching the real guy. I always knew it was Timothée Chalamet, even when he was doing his best work in the movie. And so he is really good, and I'm not trying to downplay that, but there still is a point where it's a performance, and I can always tell that. And so, you know, I don't think he's quite as good as some people have been making him out to be. He is a really good actor, though. He can do so many other great things, so that's not a discredit to him. I think he did his best here, but I think there was just a certain level. I also feel like when you pick people like Timothée Chalamet, who are so famous at this point, they're everywhere, it's really hard not to see them. I feel like when, when Walk the Line came out and Joaquin Phoenix was Johnny Cash, you know, a lot of people didn't know him then the way they do now. And so, you know, it's easier to kind of buy him as Johnny Cash, where Timothée Chalamet is a little bit harder because he is so famous. Now, I mean, he was in multiple great movies I watched this year. So this is a movie that, I don't know, you'll have to decide for yourself based on what I said. Is this going to work for you or is it not? Would I recommend it? Yes. The movie did a great job of really capturing the time period it's set very well, and I really enjoyed all of it. I just definitely felt at certain points there were some negatives and cons that kind of held it back from being perfect. But at the end of the day, this is about as good as I think a Bob Dylan biopic could ever really be. It allows the artist to have mystery, and I think that's a good thing, because a lot of my favorite musicians, I don't know everything about them. I do want to learn about them if I really love them, but also part of me wants to keep that part of my a little bit mystery, because it does feel sad sometimes when you listen to certain lyrics of songs and you interpret a meaning and it means something to you, and then you find out, oh, the artist didn't really intend that. And I feel like sometimes that can put a damper on things. That's just me spitballing and rambling now, but check this movie out. It worked for me. I'm not sure if it's going to work for everybody, but I thought it was something special.